Apex Online Racing is sponsored by Elgato, who created this lovely Stream Deck. For more information about the Stream Deck, the link is in the description below.
Good evening, everyone! It's that time of the week again. It's time for Apex Online Racing Hype Energy PC F3 League Round number 2, the Bahrain Grand Prix at the stunning Sakhir circuit. As you all know, round number 2 out of 22, so there is a long way to go. The circuit, built for $150 million, and the attractions nearby include the only nature reserve and the zoo in Bahrain. Yes, a zoo, and apparently also quite a famous tree. I don't know about that tree, but there is some kind of tree. And also, this is a circuit that obviously featured this incredible battle between Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg in 2014, the first night race in the desert. 15 turns, obviously 3 DRS zones, so there will be a huge potential for DRS trains. You can see the lap record set by Pedro de la Rosa in 2005, obviously. And let's see the action zones down into turn 1. This is an action from Xbox One Season 18, and a beautiful overtaking spot, but with a chance for a counter-attack if you do something wrong. And also PS4, obviously. Season 19 down into turn 4, also a very good spot to overtake. Tire performance in Bahrain, the middle of the allocation, obviously, so C2, C3 and C4 tires. Mediums are about 1.1 seconds slower per lap than softs, and hards are 1.6 of a second slower than the softs. So that's all, if you ask me, about the introduction. Let's just go onto the circuit. Hope everything works fine. I think everything works fine. So let's just see what's going on. Only 14 cars today, which is a shame, if you ask me. Which is basically a big shame, but what can you do about it? So 14 drivers, obviously we have only 18 drivers in the league, because one spot was free, and probably another one will also be free, because the guy that is supposed to be racing with us has just not answered any messages since registering, since signing up to the league, which gives us a good chance that he will not race. Also, 2 drivers have confirmed their absence tonight, but 2 have not, so that's why we only have 14 drivers and still no reserves. So if you want to become one, if you want to become a driver, just sign up for the league in the forum. I think all the needed links are down in the description, so you can join us and hopefully race with us next week. Next week we will all obviously be in Vietnam. So what's the classification? You can see that Chan Akinci, the McLaren driver who was incredibly fast in Melbourne in Australia, he won by a country mile, is doing that again. He's 0.3 of a second quicker than Bogin after the first qualifying attempt. Then we have Prostacek in P3. Prostacek had quite a bad race in Melbourne. He spun out early in the race, but returned to some good points. Bogin also spun, but he did retire from the session. Borb actually doing a 125.139, so also quite a good lap time for him. Borb couldn't join us last weekend, but he's now back racing and he's doing quite okay. So now 5th place for Shout in the Racing Point, 6th place for AOR Oxygen, 7th for SMM Iceman, Exoling in 8th, 9th belongs to BenQ at the moment, 10th for Vaudikas, so a Finnish driver, Potato in 11th, Dave Gaming in 12th, Fire in 13th, and Ccent in 14th, but his lap time, his first attempt must have been quite bad if you ask me. Also, we can see that the whole field is covered by quite some margin right now. Obviously, if you exclude Ccent, that becomes only 1.8 seconds, and if you exclude those 3 guys, you can see that the top 10 is really covered by a second. But we can do better, and I hope the drivers will do better. Let's see who is the closest to finishing the lap, and that was Fire, who improved into 12th. Now let's see if the next driver will be Shout, but he's coming to the pit lane. One of the Mercedes also started their lap, so let's see who's next in the line. That will be Vaudikas, but he's coming in the pit lane. So next would be Prostyczek. No, next would be BenQ actually, who's coming round the final corner. He's now in 8th. Prostyczek, what is he going to do? He improves into 4th. And 2 for that will be Dave Gaming, but he's coming to the pit lane. Ccent looks like he's on an outlap, as we all know. But Chan Akinci, he is actually finishing his lap, and he is improving just a bit. But is that enough? Yes, that's enough. By 5 thousandths of a second, he is in front of Borb. I'm just going to do one quick thing that is obviously to tell you, to show you, or maybe just to present you the whole driver's standings. It's exactly the same as it was last week because we've only had 1 race. Okay, the Haas driver, that would be Fire, but he seems to be on an in-lap. Then we have a Mercedes. We had 1 Mercedes in the field, and that would be Oxygen, but his lap is invalidated. So let's see Exoling, who's actually coming round the final corner. 117, 118, so that seems to be quite an okay lap time. Diarra is wide open right now, and is he going to improve? No, yes, he does. I'm sorry. He does improve up into 7th. So the next one in line, that should be BenQ, but he is coming to the pit lane. Prostyczek is also making some space for this guy, for Ccent, who's way down the order. More than 3 seconds down on the leader, but now that's a more respectable lap time, 125.869, and he is up to 10th. Chan Akinci, I think he's coming to the pit lane. Yes, indeed. So let's see the Williams driver, the only Williams driver in the field today. There are loads of teams that have only 1 car. We can see that McLaren, Renault, Williams, Mercedes, Alfa Romeo, and Haas. So 6 teams seem to have only 1 driver, incredibly. Potato now is in 6th, and Shout starts another lap. Bogin also started another attempt. Alpha Tauri, Borb is coming. Okay, he's approaching turn 9, and Vaudikas, he is finishing his lap, but this lap is invalidated. That is, although that is an outlap, so that doesn't really matter. There is a yellow flag in sector 1, but that's a slow Ferrari on the straight. That'd be Potato, and we have a Red Bull coming around the final corner, but he's coming to the pit lane because that is an in-lap. So let's see, that'll be Iceman on an outlap, and just behind him you can see Borb. So Borb is really okay. He's trying to make some space for himself. Very good indeed. Very normal even. I thought he was going to maybe catch maybe catch Iceman and try to hang just behind him to benefit from the toe, but that wasn't the case. But Bogin now, he's coming round the final corner. So 122, 123, 124, 25, 16, 160 even. So he's third, only 26 thousandths of a second behind as Chanakinji, obviously. Shout now, he is improving quite a bit, but is that enough? That's enough for sixth. Oxygen coming round the final corner, but he's starting another lap. Fire also doing the same as Dave Gaming, same as Potato, but Potato is coming to the pit lane, so yeah. Dave Gaming is the next in line, but Vaudikas, well, he is on a slow lap, so let's see maybe what is Iceman doing. Let's see a bit of an onboard. He's on the back straight, the shorter straight with DRS on the second. Now you can see he's taking a wide line on the entry into turn 11. Turn 11 now going up the hill on into turn 12. You really don't want to touch that curb on the inside, and then into turn 13. Quite a tricky one, but you need to go very, very precisely through here. Now, the second longest straight on the circuit, but somehow without the DRS, into turn 14. The car likes to understeer a bit in the apex, and now through turn 15, which is just another turn, onto the start-finish line, and Iceman is in fourth. Shout, no, that would be BenQ going around the final corner, but he is on an outlap. He has a McLaren behind him, but he's also on an outlap, and the Williams of Bogin is coming into the pit lane. Let's see, Shout is finishing, but he's coming to the pit lane. Same as Oxygen. No, Oxygen tried to maybe use a bit of a toe behind that racing point, and Oxygen goes into sixth, but he's only in sixth, and this Haas driver called Fire has just started another lap. Dave Gaming improving by 9/10ths of a second. You can now see that everyone except Dave is within 1 second of Chanakinji, so maybe, oh, and that's an invalidated lap time coming through the final corner. What a shame, because Dave was improving by 9/10ths of a second, so that he would be comfortably within that second of the provisional pole position time. Prostychek on an outlap, as we all know. Iceman, he is still trying to go quicker, but he is down 11 thousandths of a second on his personal best. Is he coming to the pit lane? Yes, he is. So maybe Chan Akinji, who's the next one in line, he has improved, because the minimap has showed that his second sector was purple indeed. Iceman has already decided to retire, so he will not improve in that qualifying session, but let's see what will be the time set by Chan Akinji, and he goes below 125 and decides to immediately retire on the circuit, which is not what we want to see, but the thing is, he's the fastest. Oxygen has improved. Let's see Fire, because he's coming around the final corner, but he's also coming to the pit lane. BenQ, he is going slowly, so it's also an in-lap. Oxygen decided to retire from the session. Potato is on an out-lap. BenQ is trying another, so he was on a sort of cooldown lap and is going to attack yet again. Is Borb somewhere? That is Borb coming round the final corner, but he is, as probably everyone, on an outlap. There is Prostychek going round the final corner, and let's see, turn 14, turn 15. You can now see the DRS will be wide open from this point, and he goes up into fourth, just behind Bogin, 7 thousandths of a second. You can see that Vaudikas has started another lap, and also excelling as well. Bogin will start another lap as well. BenQ, now that'll be Shout starting another lap. Potato, no, we should look at Dave Gaming, well, although he is on an outlap as well, but BenQ is not. He is going through turn 11 now, up the hill, through the second part of turn 11, into turn 12. Don't touch the curb on the inside. What's the time right now? He's down on his personal best lap time. Prostychek has decided to retire from the session, but almost no one is behind him. Dave Gaming is starting another lap, and let's see BenQ, because he is now finishing his final qualifying attempt. You can now see the time is up, and what will be the time set by BenQ? It's it's improved, but he's still 10th. Potato, he's decided to come into the pit lane. So who's the next in the line? That'll be Borb, wouldn't he? Yes, indeed, but Borb is on a very slow lap, so he is not improving as well. Cisen next, and he is 125 thousandths of a second ahead of his time, but he has now invalidated his lap. So who is the next? That'll be Excel Link, just behind Cisen in that tow of the Alfa Romeo. And now let's see, because he's coming onto the finish line. What will be the time? He's now 8th. He's now 8th. Bogin, what will be his time? He's ahead of Borb. Borb has decided to retire because he will not improve. Shout is coming to the pit lane. Valdikas is the next one, but he doesn't have any part of his front wing. And now Dave Gaming improving by half a second, so he'll almost be within that second behind Chan Akinji, or will be within a second of the second place, which is good. But let's see what will be his final lap time. He's going okay through the final corner, but he decided to abort that lap, so he's not improving. He stays 14th, which doesn't really change anything, because he still, I mean, well, if he improved by half a second, obviously he would be ahead of Fire, but you know, 11th, 12th, 13th, and even 14th are quite good positions, because this track is really tough on tires. I mean, probably one of the hardest tracks on tires because of the asphalt characteristics here. And we all know that a two-stop race is probably the way to go here. I mean, obviously most of the guys will try to do a one-stopper, but two-stoppers are not uncommon. And also starting on mediums and finishing on hards is probably the exactly best strategy. That's why Cisen, Valdikas, Fire, and Dave Gaming will have a strategic advantage over everyone else. But that's just what I'm expecting, and probably that's not the way it's going to work, which is normal because I can, you know, expect a few things and the reality is way different. So this is the end of the qualifying session. Let me just take a sip of water and we'll see the results. And you can see Chan Akinji, then Bogin, Borb, Prostyczek, Iceman, Oxygen, Shout, Excel Link, Potato, and BenQ. All of these guys in the top 10 will have to start on the soft compound, on the C4 tires. And Cisen, Valdikas, Fire, and Dave Gaming, they are going to have a free choice of tires, and that's all. You can see 14 drivers. This is a time when I can read to you, where I can show you the drivers' standings, but I don't know how to do it graphically, so I'll just read it out loud. And as you can expect, Chan Akinji is leading the standings after his win in Melbourne. Second place for Excel Ling. Third for Fire. Fourth is Oxygen. Fifth, Shout. Sixth place for Prostyczek. Seventh for Dave Gaming. Eighth for obviously that would be Iceman, who has set the fastest lap of the race. That's why he has 3 points instead of 2. And the final point belonged to Furian, who is not with us today. And obviously Valkorn, Bogin, BenQ, Aresi, that would be Aresi, would be Jani Vitsaniemi, Valdikas, Cisen, Bailey, and Borb have not scored points last weekend. Obviously, just to remind you, the driver standings are exactly the same as you've seen in Melbourne. The points are the same, so as you all know, the winner gets 25 points. The 10th placed guys get the 10th placed guy gets 1 point, and that's how it looks. Okay, so now 29 laps. Okay, so I'm getting a message that they've aborted his lap because he started the final lap after the time was up and he didn't want to get a penalty, basically, probably, because that is just a Codemasters bug. You can see the tire strategies proposed by the game. Two-stopper after starting on softs. Two-stopper after starting on softs, but using two sets of mediums. I mean, let's be honest, they'll probably just one stop from here. Most of the top 10 will just go on to hard tires and go to the end. Those starting on mediums, so Season, Vavdikas, Fire and Dave Gaming will start on mediums and probably finish pit around lap 12, 13 for hards, and that'll be it. Unless we get a safety car. And that's where it will get funnier. At least I hope. But we will see. Chan Akinji, he won the Australian Grand Prix by a country mile. He won pole position, but by only around 150 thousandths of a second, which is not that much. But it's quite a significant gap, because almost everyone in the field is capable of doing laps within a second. And Chan seems to have an upper hand in that, but maybe, just maybe, that was only Australia. So let's see the lights. The lights go out, and away we go for the Bahrain Grand Prix. Chan starts well. Also, Dave seems to be already around P12, but let's see, because Prostychek is now attacking Borb. Borb is going round the outside, and Iceman is in a bit of a sandwich, and he is indeed sandwich. Prostychek goes up into third, Shout goes up into fifth. And Iceman is now being a little bit swallowed by everyone else, because he's now down in fifth. He was sixth for a moment, but what's most important, there are no crashes in the field, and Chan Akinji was fighting with Bogin for the lead, but nothing happened there. Also, Borb and Iceman still fighting. Iceman is trying to come back at him, but he cannot, and Borb is still fourth. Iceman tried to maybe go down the inside into turns 9 and 10, but that didn't work as well. Exeling and Season are just changing positions constantly in 8th and 9th. Potato, Vavdikas, Dave Gaming and Fire is last. Let's go back to the top, because Bogin is just a half a second behind Chan Akinji. Then we have Prostychek in third and Borb in fourth, then Iceman in fifth, and Oxygen will be in sixth. You just don't pay attention on his tire graphics, because that is obviously wrong. Season had a moment coming out of turn 13, and Potato had a run on BenQ, and that's why Potato now will be back in the top 10, or is he not? Because BenQ is going round the outside. He had a good exit. Chan Akinji is setting the fastest lap. Obviously, the timing screen is now probably going a bit wild, I should say. And now let's see, is BenQ ahead of Potato? Potato has the inside in turn 2, which tends to be a good line. Shout gets a penalty already, but now we can see that BenQ got a better exit than Potato. So now, is it BenQ or is it Potato? Who will be 10th? I think that will be still 10th. Into turn 4, that will be BenQ, and now the timing screen is obviously mad again. Chan Akinji already ahead of Bogin. Then we have Prostychek, Borb, Iceman, Oxygen, Shout, Exeling, Season in 9th, BenQ in 10th. And then we have Dave Gaming, Fire, and Valhik has lost some time because he is last right now. Shout now. Well, I'm not going to pay attention to the differences shown on to the interval gaps shown on the timing screen just now, because they are wrong. Because the timing screen was obviously mad at the start of the lap. But you can see that Bogin is just behind Chan Akinji. And one thing about this track, it really promotes the DRS trains, and I think we will see one at least at the beginning of the race. DRS is enabled. You can see that Chanakinji has set the fastest lap of the race. You can see that Bogin is there, but he is way too far behind to even think of making a move. I think the gaps are now okay. Yeah, I think they're working. But BenQ is now in a Ferrari sandwich, but let's go back to the top, because you can see that Bogin is really putting pressure on Chanakinji. That'll be a fight for the lead, obviously, although I have a feeling that this gap shown is again a little bit wrong. Prostyczek is still within that fight, within the DRS train, but it also looks like Borb is out of the DRS zone here. Iceman, though, is on his tail, and Iceman has oxygen on his tail, as you can see. Let's go back to Borb and Iceman, and that is still obviously there is no move right now, because, well, the straight between turns 11 and between turns 10 and 11 is quite short, and obviously you need to have a very good exit out of turn 10, even way better exit than the rival ahead of you, in order to make a move. So, you know, your best bet to make a move is here, down into turn 1, and then you can get a second bite at the DRS into turn 4. You can see that Bogin just breezes past Chanakinji into turn 1. That's an easy maneuver, but now the McLaren driver will have the DRS and Bogin's out. Bogin is round. What happened there? I mean, I know what happened there. He probably just was too aggressive on throttle and just lost it. But I'd say the second race in a row where Bogin just loses it. And he's lost it big time, because he's lost it just when he hit the lead, which is devastating for him, to say the least. That leaves Chanakinji in the lead, but Prostyczek will have the DRS, will have only one car ahead of him instead of two, so maybe he will also try to put pressure on the McLaren. You can see that Borb is now being chased by Iceman and Oxygen. Coming back to Bogin, one thing, I have a feeling he may have pressed the overtake button too early, which obviously gives you a lot more power onto the rear wheels, and that's when it's easy to lose it. Obviously, this corner, turn 2, turns 2 and 3, they're really tough on traction as well. So it all combined creates such a scenario where it's very easy to lose the rear, but let's not care about it, because right now Iceman is going to make a move on Borb round the outside into turn 1. He had the DRS, he breezed past the Alpha Tauri and now made the move stick into turn 1, but now is Borb going to maybe attack him again into turn 4, or is Iceman going to stay in third? Looks like he is, although Borb is going to do a really nice over and under, and he is up in third, or maybe back in third. That would be a better sentence, better constructed sentence, and a better description of what happened. We have seen the first time penalties. One of them was Dave Gaming. Probably the second one was BenQ, but I'm not sure. So let's go back to Oxygen, because he tried to overtake Iceman into turn 10, but that didn't work out, obviously, because it's such a hard overtaking zone, almost impossible to overtake into turn 10, because you need to be really committed. You really need to find the right braking zone, and you need to... Oh, and Borb has lost it! So another driver loses it, but this time Borb obviously has lost his front wing, because he hit the wall. And I'm still a bit confused, but that's not a moment to be confused, because Oxygen now is ahead of Iceman, and that is another easy move. one thing again, this was at the end of lap 5, so these tires are already, what, 8 laps old, because they have done qualifying in case of Borb and Bogin as well. So they are quite old, and as I've said earlier, these tires don't go far, these softs don't go far on this circuit, so maybe it's a combination of being a little bit too aggressive on throttle, and BenQ has retired from the set. Okay, so is it going to be a safety car? Because he seems to have lost it as well. I've had a little bit of a lag of the game, but I don't know what happened. But anyway, all these spins seem to be a sort of, I don't know how to call it, but really a result of low tire life, the corners being hard on traction, being a little bit too aggressive on throttle from the drivers, and maybe pressing the overtake button, which gives you quite a boost when you press it. So maybe they've been pressing it too early, and that's why they've lost the rear. You can now see that Prostyczek, he is now already over a second behind Chanakinchi, although he has way more battery now. You can see that a two-step strategy with the use of hard tires is probably the one that its pit window is right now, is open right now. I'm sorry for losing my words right now. Shout is the first one to come into the pit lane, so he will indeed take on hard tires. I'm not surprised, because that's probably the best strategy even for a one-stopper when you've started on softs. You can see that Oxygen was going defensive into turn 4, but Iceman still stays there. Exceling also, he is now back in the podium game. He was quite lowly. He was quite low in the qualifying. You can see that he has gained 3 positions. So he started 8th. Season has gained 5. He started 11, and he is on a different strategy to anyone else. But Exceling is in the podium, in the fight for the podium. And remember, he was 2nd in Australia, so he needs those points if he wants to fight Chanakinchi this season. Oxygen now go. Oh, you can see that Exceling, he was losing traction of the rear wheels going through turn 11. This is probably the biggest fight right now. Also, Dave Gaming close to his teammate, but they are on different strategies, so maybe Ferrari will issue some team orders, although that's Ferrari, so you can never expect that. Chanakinchi comes into the pit lane as well, so the second driver to come in, and you can see that everyone else is staying out. You can see that the pit window obviously is open, which is not surprising. And now is Exceling going to make a move on Iceman? I don't think so. So he's not going to make that move into turn 1. Chanakinchi, Bogin, and Potato, all of them have decided to come into the pit lane. All of them have taken on hard tires, which is probably the most popular strategy at this circuit. Borb obviously is on mediums, but he's going to try something different. He's going to make up all the time he's lost on by hitting the wall after exiting turn 13, but he will have to make a two-stopper. He will have to make a two-stopper work, and he's lost huge amounts of time. One good thing for him is obviously that one driver is already out of the race, so maybe 3 drivers will also crash out, and he will have easy points. But you can also see the tires, the soft tires, are really worn, and you can see that with on Prostyczek's onboards. Almost everyone on soft tires is driving on worn rubber. You can see that Season, his tires are still okay, but obviously he is on mediums. So is the whole train going to pull into the pit lane? Prostyczek comes into the pit lane, Oxygen and Iceman comes into the pit lane, and now Season is going to make a move on Exceling. Exceling obviously had to stay out because his teammate came into the pit lane, and Season takes the lead of the race. Now we have Dave Gaming and Vauhdika. So except Exceling, everyone who started on the between P11 and P14 on the grid is now in the top 4 positions. But that is what we were expecting. They were going to they were always going to go long on their stints. Now we can see Potato, he tried to make a move into turn 1 on Iceman, but that didn't work. Iceman is still 10th, 1.5 seconds behind Oxygen. Let's go back to the top guys. I mean, Seasoned, Exoling, Dave Gaming, Valdicas and Fire. The top 5 have not come into the pit lane yet, although one of them will probably pit right now. So we have a more, I'd say, we have a calmer moment right now in the race. Obviously, different strategies right now. You can see that Bogin maybe is going to make a move on Potato into turn 11, and he makes that move with ease. Where is Exceling in fact, he is coming into the pit lane, and Dave Gaming was actually doing one thing that I'm not a fan of. He was trying to use, obviously, the slipstream of Exceling, which is good, but you could have seen that he, in the end, wanted to enter pit lane, and then he went through that line between the pit entry and the track. So when you cross that line, obviously you will get a penalty, although you don't get it in this game. And I'm not sure how the stewards are going to approach that kind of situations, but just to let you know that I'm not a fan of these situations as well. Bogin was fighting with Iceman, so actually Bogin's back in the game, I'd say, because Exceling, you know, remember Exceling is in the fight for podium even, although we can see that Oxygen, oh no, Oxygen, no, I'm sorry, Shout, right now he is in provisional podium, because he undercut all these guys. Oxygen, Exceling, Iceman, Boggy, Potato, they were all undercut by this racing point. And now, Prostyczek, he's, well, 2.7 seconds down on Chanagnichi, so by staying out a lap longer, he's lost almost 2 seconds to the McLaren. And that's what will probably win the race to the Turkish driver. But we're still not sure. Maybe there will be a safety car. Maybe these guys will capitalize on that safety car. Although Fire is already coming to the pit lane, and that is at the end of lap 10. So only 10 laps on mediums. That's quite a short stint. He's obviously going to put on hard tires, and he'll probably emerge in the last place, because Borb, now we can see he was, what, 12 seconds, and I think Borb will be ahead of Fire. That is going to happen indeed. So Fire is basically back where he started. He's basically back where he started. Dave Gaming and Seasend, they are going to fight for the lead right now, maybe, but they really don't want to lose time on those mediums. Obviously, if they pit, they will be ahead of Fire, because Fire was quite some way off of the behind the rest of the drivers who have started on mediums. But still, if they start fighting, they will lose time and probably lose position to Borb, to Fire, and to anyone else. So that's not really what they want to do. Also, this fight between Oxygen, Exceling, Iceman, and even Bogin and Potato, as I've said earlier, it's only a fight for the net 4th place. Valdicas comes into the pit lane, so the second Alpha Tauri comes into the pit lane, and let's see, obviously, he will put on the hard tires, and the question is, where will he come out? But I would suppose he will come out around Fire, although remember that the undercut is very powerful on this track, and Fire is already going through the start-finish straight, but Fire is still way behind Valdicas. So okay, so Valdicas is out in 11th, Tanakinchi is back onto the podium, Borb gets a time penalty, but well, he's last anyway, so he's not going to suffer from that penalty. And also, he's not making this two-stop strategy work right now. Which means that he will probably finish in the distance, in a distant last place. But maybe I'm wrong. It's the end of lap 12, and Season and Dave Gaming are still staying out. But I think their time has come, because you can already see the darker stripe on their tires, but they are staying out, and you can see that the pit window for their strategy is open now. Okay, but the question is how much they're losing to Valhikas, let's say, because he is the guy they are really fighting purely on strategy. Because Potato, even Boggin, even all these guys, they are not fighting them on strategy. Meanwhile, Excelling is trying to make a move on Oxygen, so finally some life in the midfield. Also, Iceman is trying to make a move on Boggin, and now he's making a move on Oxygen, and Boggin will come into play as well. Boggin gets a time penalty. Oxygen has lost 3 places in 3 corners, although Boggin is still on the inside, and he is letting Oxygen through, so he is down in 9th, Oxygen down in 8th, so only he lost 2 positions. But still, that wasn't his best moment in the car. Yellow flag sector 2, and that will be Borb, who just spun out coming out of turn 4. He probably hit the barrier that is on the outside of turn 4, the barrier that prevents drivers from going onto the outer circuit, the outer track, which will obviously make its Formula 1 debut in December, because the race will be December 6th when this race will happen. And Dave is doing the same thing again. By wanting to take slipstream from the cars pitting, he is crossing the pit entry line twice. Wants to sort of enter the pit lane and then again to exit it. So that's not what we want to see, and probably some drivers will report it. I'm sorry for the FPA's drops. Is that Borb again making a mistake? Yes, indeed, that's Borb. He is the reason of yellow flag, so you can see that his car must have been tail happy, really, in all those races, all those season, because I wasn't talking about it. He's come out in 7th, and Boggin has lost it again. Boggin lost it again. He didn't lose the front wing. He didn't. Borb has retired from the session, but I'm not surprised. But he didn't even make it to the pits. Oh, that might be bad. That might be bad. But Season came out in 7th. He was fighting Boggin, Oxygen. Probably Boggin hit the rear of Season entering turn 4. That's why he's down in 11th now. But Season, he's in 7th. He's just behind Iceman. He's just behind Excelling. But he is 4 seconds behind Shout. Everyone is more than 4 seconds behind Shout. That will be a fight for the podium. Dave Gaming finally decided that it's time to maybe not cross the pit entry line, and once he's committed to the pit entry, he decided to come in finally. But where will he come out? He obviously had the DRS from Season. Season is in traffic, but that traffic is approaching rapidly. Iceman, Excelling, Season, and Dave Gaming is behind him. Behind also Oxygen. Yes, he will be behind Oxygen. Season tries to make a move on Excelling. He's around the outside in turn 2. He had the inside in turn 3. He has the DRS. He will have the inside in turn 4. But outside in that corner is also very powerful, but not this time. And Season is now up in 5th, which is also, which is brilliant for him. Which shows that the counter strategy, the alternative strategy, can work here. But the question is, can he overtake Iceman? And then, can he maybe start closing down on Shout? That is the most important question. Is Oxygen going to make a move on Excelling in turn 11? No. my feeling is that we will have a train of cars from 4th to basically 10th. So from Iceman to Valdikas, Fire in not too distant 11th, and Bogin in 12th because he pitted again, but he's in a final place, as you can imagine. Can also see that Dave Gaming is also on a move, but he's still behind Oxygen. But what you can imagine is that there will be a train of cars between 4th and 9th, 4th and 10th maybe. Although Dave Gaming is now making a move on Oxygen into turn 4, but is Oxygen going to hang around the outside? He is! And he will have the inside, but he will have the outside in turn 6. And that's where Dave Gaming comes back at him and takes that 7th place. But again, we will have that train. You can see that Iceman is now maybe starting to close in on Shout, but still that's 3.8 seconds, so they all have to play the long game. You can see that Season is not really taking the DRS from Iceman, so maybe he knows that he doesn't really have to attack the Renault driver. They all need to stick together and work, and maybe they will catch Shout before the end of the race. They have 13 laps to do it, and the gap now is down to 3.7, 3.6 maybe even. And you could have seen that Iceman was crossing the pit entry line yet again, so another driver has been doing that. Actually, the question is how many drivers have been doing that. I don't know, but it seems like almost everyone has been doing that, and that's probably normal for them, but not too normal for the regulations. But let's not care about it. Let's see the race leader. What is he up to? And he's just going through turn 10 very easily, very calmly. He has the 2.5 second gap over Prostechek. Bogin gets the fastest lap of the race, but obviously that one is only to write it into his stats and nothing more, because he is still in 12th, so no points for that. But Prostechek is 2.7 seconds behind Chanakinji, and that is the same gap since they have come out of the pit lane, so probably for the last 7 laps. Chan Akinji is just controlling the gap between him and Prostechek, and he's not even probably pushing that hard. Shout in 3rd, but he's still 3.9 seconds ahead of Iceman, so the gap that was coming down to 3.5 seconds now is back to 4 seconds, so looks like the podium is already known, unless we get a safety car, obviously. But nah, I don't think that's going to happen. Excel Link behind Season. Season is not really making any impression on Iceman, who is even pulling away, although it looks like Iceman was using more ERS than Season. Then we have Dave Gaming, obviously, who is trying to maybe make a move on Excel Link, but in that DRS train, it's obviously tough to make huge inroads. Oxygen in 8th and Potato in 9th. Remember, Oxygen was in podium places before the pit stop, so it all sort of changed. Also, remember that, I mean, oh, Oxygen was, wait a minute, he was in a lap ahead of Potato. Yellow flag, and that is Shout! And that is Shout, so the fight for the podium now is open, because Shout is down in 10th. Shout is down in 10th. Iceman is all of a sudden in 3rd. Way behind Prostechek, because that is 11 seconds behind him. But now Season needs to push, and he needs to push hard now, because He's what? He's 1.3 seconds behind Iceman. We can see that Dave Gaming was showing his Ferrari in the mirrors of XL Link, so he also thinks of making a move, because all of a sudden the podium is up for grabs for anybody right now. Even for Shout, if he wants, he just can return to it. But the thing is, he has the oldest tires in the field even. Valdikas gets a 3-second time penalty, but he's still down in 9th, 3 seconds ahead of Shout, by the way. But as I've said, Shout has the oldest tires in the field right now, and that may be also the reason why he spun. You can see that Season already also had a moment coming out of turn 10. Everyone is sort of weaving on the straight, but that's normal because, first of all, everyone wants to break that DRS, break that toe. Everyone wants to break the slipstream, which is very powerful on this circuit, obviously. And the second thing, obviously, everyone is entitled to do one defensive maneuver on the straight and then come back onto the racing line, unless obviously there is no car side by side with them. So you can really go, you can really make even an S on that straight, unless obviously you're blocking drivers too much. You could have seen how drivers were breaking the toe and breaking the slipstream in Monza last week, especially during the fight between Pierre Gasly and Carlos Sainz. But that is something way different to our racing. So what, 10 or even 9.5 laps to go? Tanakinji now has a 3-second gap over Prostacek, so he sort of pulled some gap, but just slightly, just to show the Red Bull driver that he is leading here. And Iceman 11.5 seconds behind the second place, but he is still quite comfortably in that third place because he has broken that slipstream, because he's broken that DRS train. And Season, as I've said, he's not making any impression on XL Link. He's not making any impression on Dave Gaming as well. You can see that Dave is maybe going to make a move on XL Link into turn 1. XL Link also is making huge inroads on Season into turn 1, but surprise, surprise, no moves happened there. Now maybe into turn 4, but still way too far behind to even make any move. So as you can imagine, nothing has changed, at least now, obviously, because I have a weird feeling that some things will change. Potato and Oxygen, they have been fighting for 7th, but I think that's not, that's the same they have been. So the only thing that, yeah, that has changed is that weird green arrow here, and that's the only thing that has changed in that fight. So yeah, a little bit of a train, of a DRS train again, a little bit of a boring part of the race, but let's not forget that it still is wide open, especially the fight for podium, because I still feel that Season and the guys behind, they can make up the difference between Season and Iceman, and they still can catch the podium. Oxygen now making a move on Dave Gaming, but it's not going to end well, and he made a contact with the Ferrari, but thankfully no one's around. No one has also lost their front wing. Dave Gaming is actually now ahead of XL Link because he had better exit, and XL Link, he has a front wing problem. That's why he's lost another place, so maybe he's hit someone. I mean, surely he has hit someone. And now down in 7th, he has a huge front wing problem because Potato now has made an easy move on the Red Bull driver. And that is the end of his podium hopes today, I think. Dave Gaming now in 5th. Oxygen has some sort of a breathing space, but it's the same as Seasand. One thing, is the same as Iceman. One thing, Seasand has broken the DRS. He has now escaped the DRS zone behind him, behind the Seasand. Also, Dave Gaming will be desperate to get back into that 1 second window he was using. You could have seen that he almost used all of his battery just to catch Seasand, and Seasand now is sort of maybe starting to catch Iceman, but only by a few tenths, by a few hundredths of a second in every corner, but maybe he is going to do it. He only needs to find now, what, 3/10 of a second, and if he finds those 3/10 of a second, he will have the DRS, and that will change a lot in this race. I think it will change absolutely a lot. Oxygen now also very close behind Dave Gaming, and one thing is also certain, they will not have the DRS right now, and that is what will and that is obviously what will and can lose the podium for Dave. Chana Kinji now 3.6 seconds ahead of Prostijek, so he's building that gap slightly, just lap by lap, 100th of a second by 100th of a second, but he's still there, and he's still showing that he is the best driver, at least during the first 2 rounds. Excelling, he is now behind Vaudikas, and he will slowly fall into the clutches of Shout and then into the clutches of Fire, so he will probably finish outside the points. Seasand now also, again, trying to make up the difference between him and Iceman. 1.1 seconds now, 6 laps to go in the Bahrain Grand Prix. And Seasand is still just behind that DRS zone. He's just behind that DRS window. You can see that Iceman is really weaving on that straight. He really wants to break that DRS toe. And right now, Vaudikas gets probably another time penalty, while he is ahead of Excelling, and Excelling, as I've said, he is falling into the clutches of this guy, of Shout, who was on the podium and who's lost that podium in a dramatic way. And then he will also fall into the clutches of Fire. That is how it will look like, probably. Dave Gaming back in the DRS zone behind Seasand. And Seasand still is 1.2, 1.3, 1.4 seconds behind Iceman. Ooh, that is going to be tough. That's going to be tough, but I still have a weird feeling that, well, maybe, well, I'm sorry, not maybe, I think that Iceman will stay in 3rd. And Seasand and Dave Gaming will fight between each other for the 4th place, because that is realistically what they can do when Iceman has managed to break that DRS window. Although you can all see that every one of them is low on battery, so there is no way they will make huge inroads on each other, because they really have the same equipment. They really are in the same situation right now. Excelling just behind Shout right now, as I've said. I've missed it, but Shout is now up in 9th, and well, Fire is in the next in the queue, just as it is, and that's all. But Dave Gaming now very close behind Seasand. He's very close behind Season, and I will not be surprised if there will be if there will finally be a move next lap, but that's not the move we were waiting for. Lap number 26 has started now, so we only have 4 laps to go. We probably know the winner. We probably know the second place. We almost know the third place. But we don't know the fourth place, and maybe this is the moment where Dave Gaming makes his move on Season into turn 1, or is it? I don't think it is. Okay, so he's maybe still trying to just catch the Alfa Romeo ahead of him. Maybe still sort of hang in just behind him to save some fuel, save tires. And you can see they were both sliding out of turn 4, which wasn't the case with Iceman. So that's why they've lost now a huge chunk, and I think that the fight for the podium now is over for them. Now the only fight they're in is the fight for 4th. And that's all they can fight for. Although, Oxygen, if they keep on fighting for quite a long time, obviously, Oxygen may finally come to them and also start fighting. Oxygen was in the podium places before. He's now up in 6th, just 1.2 seconds behind these two guys. Maybe, just maybe, we will have a 3-way fight for 4th. Shout now gets a 3-second time penalty, but he is, well, down in 9th. And Fire will probably make a move on Excelling anytime soon, but this is more important fight because Dave Gaming is finally making his move on Seasend into turn 1. That will be an easy one. But now, Seasend will have the DRS into turn 4, and he will have, well, he will have more battery. So if he wants, he just can switch his engine mode on to overtake, but he's not doing it, at least not right now. Maybe he will hang in there just behind Dave Gaming. Maybe he will stay there and attack on the final lap, because that's what he can do. Remember, there are still only 2.5 laps to go, and Oxygen has lost some time again to them. Dave Gaming, he has made up some time on Iceman, and he is really going away. He's really running away from Season right now. So maybe Season has judged it wrong. Or maybe it's just the thing that Dave Gaming is way faster on straights. Because you can see now, he's down to he's down to almost a second. That's 1.07, 1.02, 1.017, 1.02, and he now had to. Okay, so he's now down to 9/10 of a second. Will he have the DRS? Yes, he will have the DRS, but he will have no battery. But the same case with Iceman. So that is game on for the podium, I would say. And I think that Dave has forgotten to use the DRS because that's not what he should do. But maybe I'm wrong, of course. Maybe I'm wrong, and that's just what the game has showed me, and you know. And that's not the way it looks. It really looks. Is Fire ahead of Excelling? Obviously he is. Potato also has lost a position to Vaudikas, so Vaudikas is coming back into some really nice points. But is that enough with his penalty to stay in that point scoring position? I think yes, because Excelling has lost a lot of time. But Dave Gaming down to 9/10 of a second. He will have the DRS right now, and he will use it with pleasure. You can see that Iceman is still trying to break that slipstream. He's trying to break the toe. He has a little bit less battery, but more or less they have the same battery levels. They are on the same battery levels right now, but it just is the case that Iceman is losing time on exits. I also think Dave must have a little bit skinnier wings, we have started the final lap of the Bahrain Grand Prix. Is that the moment Dave is going to attack Iceman, or is he just going to set up his move into turn 4? I think he's not going to make a move into turn 1. He will now stick behind Iceman through turns 2 and 3, but he will have the advantage going into turn 4, and Dave Gaming takes third on the final lap into turn 4, and I think that's done. I think that's done. Although, let's wait, because he's still 3 tenths ahead of him. No, 4 tenths, 5 tenths. I think that's done. But maybe it also brought Season closer, remember, because he was within a second behind Dave, and he just used him as a tow. So maybe Iceman will lose another position on the final lap as well, although he will have the DRS, so he will need to be careful. Oh, okay, it's going to be tasty into turn 11. Iceman stays in 4th. Let's go back to Chanakinchi, because he's now going to go through the final corner. Well, that's turn 14 here, then turn 15, and he wins the second race out of 2. Chanakinchi wins the Bahrain Grand Prix. Prostyczek wins. He is second, obviously, and the gaps are obviously wrong. Season, is he ahead of Iceman? Dave Gaming will take third, and who will take 4th? Is it going to be Iceman? Is it going to be Season? Alright, there is a big mistake. Big mistake. You can obviously see that Iceman is ahead of Season. And Dave lost his podium because he had penalty. That is fine. But Prostyczek, the game decided that he was down a lap, which is obviously wrong. Oh my god. It happened again. The game strikes back, I'd say. But let's just, because you can see it showed Bogin was in 12th and then just moved him up into 11th. You've seen it with me, right? Right, okay. So this podium is obviously wrong. Alright. The winner. Let's just skip this. The podium scene. The winner, Chanakinchi. It's certain. Had a 3-second time penalty, by the way. Prostyczek, he didn't have a 3-second time penalty, but that is total BS. He ran 29 laps, and the game oh, good lord. That is some BS. I'm not going to use this full word here, but this is some BS. I don't know what to say. I'll just see what... I don't know. There's no reason. I'd even say Prostyczek might have won that race. But it will all be known after today. Okay, Chan, Akinci, Iceman, Season, Dave Gaming, Oxygen, Potato, Fire, Vodikas, Shout, Excelink, Bogin, Prostyczek, Bob, BenQ. That is how it looks, at least on that game or race ending scene or the screen. But what my game showed is obviously that Prostyczek has won that race. You know? And I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. If you want to stick with me, I will try to work out the finishing order, knowing that Prostyczek had no penalties and Chanakinci had penalties. Obviously, it won't change anything in terms of another positions. It will just bump everyone else from second to the final position down. But I have to check it, and I have to check it. Obviously, I have. Okay, cool. So that is not going to show me anything, is it? It's not. But from what I can see, it was around 2.8, 2.9 seconds between Chanakinchi and Prostyczek. I think Prostyczek won it, but let's just say that he won the race, and I will let you know the final race classification next week. Because next week, where are we going to go? What do you think, people? And we are going to... wait a minute, obviously... that's kind of... I'd say that's kind of... understandable where we're going, because we are going to Vietnam. Next week, so no breaks. We are just going to Vietnam. September 20th, the time is the same, so that'll be 9 p.m. Yeah, that'll be 9 p.m. CET, 8 p.m. UK time. That'll be the start time of the race. And obviously, well, Prostyczek won it, Chanakinchi was second, and I think that would mean Iceman was third. But I think Prostyczek won it. But anyway, that was the round number 2, the Bahrain Grand Prix, the Apex Online Racing Hype Energy F3 League PC Season 20, round number 2, Bahrain Grand Prix. I was Julio Massa. I think I haven't introduced myself again. Terrible. I'm a terrible host, you know. I'm a terrible host, you know. I'm a terrible host. But anyway, thank you for watching this stream. Thank you to Elgato Gaming and Hype Energy for sponsoring this channel, because without them it wouldn't be possible to even do these leagues and do these streams. But yeah, thank you for coming. Thank you for joining me, and hopefully we'll see you next time in Vietnam in a week's time. Thank you, and good night.